Hey, shawties, and welcome to another episode of the Shifting Your Atmosphere podcast, where choosing you is not selfish, it's necessary. I'm your host, Symone, and you already know what we talk about here. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent of all that it takes to choose you. Yes, you. In the midst of motherhood and womanhood, including all them things that nobody was trying to warn us about before we got here. Yeah, those two. Now, I want you to know this is a safe space for you to be vulnerable and to grow. So I want you to take a deep breath, open your mind, open your heart, and let's get ready to shift your atmosphere together. Let me tell y'all, one thing for certain, two things for sure, God got a sense of humor. And I ain't talking about a little sense of humor, I'm talking about a big sense of humor. Because anything you run out here and be saying out your mouth, act like this, get on your nerves and this, that, and the third, he will find a way to bring it back to you full circle. He will find a way to bring it back to you full circle. And let me tell you, one thing that he brought back to me recently was one thing that my mom used to say majority of my entire life. She probably still say it to this day. And it used to hurt me. It used to annoy me. And if I heard it, I immediately got mad. And that was, don't nobody understand me. I'm so misunderstood. Like, girl, is it you? Everybody don't get you. Everybody don't understand you. I just don't see how this add up. But it wasn't until I got to the point in my life where I started to feel misunderstood. I said, man, bro, ain't nobody getting it. Don't none of y'all get it. Don't none of y'all understand. And I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting mad and I'm really finna check out. But I had to calm down, right? I had to calm down. And God had to truly sit with me and be like, why are you so mad that nobody understands you? And I had to sit there and truly think to myself, why am I so upset that no one understands me? Why was my mother so upset that no one understood her? And I had to come to the realization that the reason why I felt like nobody understood me and I was so misunderstood was because I didn't understand me. I didn't know who I was. I had lost sight of who I was. And if I didn't understand who I was, how on earth was I going to effectively communicate who I was to someone else for them to understand who I was? How on earth was I going to find the place in the community of people that I could thrive around if I didn't know who I was? And I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And not only get to the bottom of it, but figure out, how could a woman who's feeling this begin to come from under that feeling, because it could be so heavy and so weighted. So today's episode is going to be all about if I could go back to my mother and speak to her as a young mom, a 22-year-old mom who's starting a brand new career, just becoming a wife, and has a little bitty tiny baby that's under 1 year old and started to feel as if no one was understanding her. These are the things that I would want to share with her. First things first, just accept that everybody's not going to understand you. There's no way in the world that every person in the world could understand everybody. And if you stop trying so hard to get other people to understand you, you wouldn't have to worry about whatever type of emotion you could feel and end up internalizing about when they don't. It's not really their job to understand you. We were all uniquely made different on purpose. You were made for your life. I was made for my life. We were all individually made for our own journey. And none of our journeys or our lives look exactly the same. Therefore, we will never understand what it's like to be you in your life, with your career, with your family, in your home. You see where I'm going with this? We will never understand. But if you keep in your mind that everyone should understand, then that's going to cause turmoil internally for you, because you feel like you're doing all that you can, or you're just hanging on by a thread, or whatever your circumstances are in your life are being minimized or belittled because specific people don't understand it. It may not be meant for them to understand. And that's okay. Even if it is meant for them to understand, but they currently don't, that's okay. Even if, like for me, I was a child, not understanding what an adult woman who was a wife and a mother with a new career was going through. There's no way that I was going to understand that. And that had to be okay. You need to release the expectation of others to always understand you, because you're going to continuously to get let down, and that letdown is going to lead to extra frustration that then will continue the cycle of other mental issues and other mental struggles in your mind and end up honestly limiting you from where you can go and where you can grow simply because people don't understand. Just accept that they're not going to understand and release yourself of that expectation. Therefore, now, if they do decide to grow with you and learn with you and understand, that will be okay. If they don't and they stay where they at, that's okay. Because I'm going to just be real with you. Every person's worth not going to go out of their way to understand you. We're just going to call a spade a spade. Everybody in this world, even some people extremely close to you, are not going to go out of their way just to understand you. And you have to become okay with that. Because if you don't, you will allow that to affect your growth, your healing, your journey processing through life, because you're like, I can't get forward. I can't move forward. I can't do what I'm trying to do. I can't make no change because no one understands. No one understands. I can't be supported because no one understands. Baby, you're going to have to let that go. You have to let that go. Second thing I would tell her to do would be to get to know herself. How can anybody else understand you if you don't understand you? How can you effectively articulate who you are to other people, therefore for them to understand you, if you don't know who you are yourself? I'll even go out on a limb and say, what if the reason why other people don't understand you is because you don't understand yourself? Is that too much? I really hope it's not, because as I sit here and think about that, all the times that I didn't understand who I was when it felt as if people didn't understand who I was and no one understood me even more, because I couldn't even tell people what it was that they weren't understanding. It is like, you don't get me, you don't get me. What don't I get? And I couldn't tell them. So that led me to believe that a big part of us being misunderstood starts with the fact that we don't understand ourselves. If you understand yourself fully as a person, you will be able to therefore then inform other people on who you are. So as you get to know yourself, you're going to have to be honest with yourself. You're going to have to be cutthroat, raw, and honest with yourself, okay? You don't have time to lie to yourself about who you want to pretend to be, about who other people have told you you are. None of that. None of that. We don't have time for none of that. You need to get to know you, who you are. Not you as a mother. Not you as a daughter. Not you as a career title. Not you as a wife. Not you as anything else besides your name. The name your mama gave you. Just you. You have got to get to know you. When I was going through therapy, that was one of the hardest exercises that I feel like me and her ever went through, which was getting to know who was I. She gave me an assignment that you guys can try on your own if you would like. And the assignment was take a piece of paper, number it 1 through 10, and give me the 10 core pieces of who you are. Baby, I did not know that. I did not know that. And the more I tried to put in there, I would put in things that were kind of superficial. I would put in things that other people have told me. I would put in being a mother, being this and that. And every time she would shoot my list down. She kept shooting my list down until I got down to who I truly was. Now, where the honesty comes in, part of who you are may not be a part of something that you like. When I had to admit that I was a nurturer, that was honestly something that I did not like about myself. I did not like being nurturing to other people. Not because I wasn't good at it, but because I had an issue with the fact that I felt like I was nurturing everybody else and I didn't feel like people were nurturing me back. So I became upset with a part of who I was. And in becoming upset with the part of who I was, I began to get distant with that part of who I was. So I couldn't tell her who I was because I was fighting and battling parts of who I naturally was, who God created me to be, because I didn't like the response that I was getting from people around me in doing that. I didn't like how often I became the nurturer in situations when it seemed like didn't nobody else care. But here you go, always trying to nurture somebody. Here you go, always trying to nurture somebody. And you know what? I had to eventually be like, that's just who I am. That is just a part of who I am. And when I begin to truly sit down and learn and deeply dive and be honest with myself about who I was, that's when I could begin to grow. That's when I began to be able to express to other people who I was. The reason why that exercise was one of the hardest things that I had to do when I was going through therapy was simply because I had tacked on to me so many things that other people told me that I was, that I didn't even know who I was or even who I wanted to be. Like, for example, when I was a kid, my parents always told me, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be in the medical field, this, that, and the third. Just because I was smart and because they wanted me to have a career that would make money and take care of myself. All very parental things. There's nothing wrong with that. However, the fact that I went all the way to college, tried to get into a medical science career program, knowing good and well I ain't going to be no doctor. I knew good and well that I didn't want to be no doctor, but I had said it so many years in my life because I was told that's who I should be. I had said it and believed it to the point that it became it became a reflex to answer myself, what you want to be when you grow up, a nurse? What you want to be when you grow up, a pediatrician? Like, I would just pick anything out of the medical field because I knew that's where my parents wanted me to go. And they had told me for so long, it almost seemed as if it became a part of who I was. Until I got older and I got actually in the program and I had to come to the realization, baby, this is not for you. Yes, you might be smart. Yeah, you might care for people and they see that caring part in you, but being this is not who you are. And I had to understand who I was for me to be able to stand up to other people about who I was. So here I am. I could have went through that whole entire medical career and be like, don't nobody just get me. Don't nobody get who I am. Don't nobody get that why I'm unhappy with my job. Don't nobody get why I'm this. Because you didn't speak up for you. You didn't get to know you for you. To be able to stand up and effectively speak for yourself and verbalize who you are so that other people can get to know you. When you walk into a room and you introduce yourself, you tell those people who you are, whether they know you or you're not. But if you walk into a room and somebody else tells you who you are, oh, I know who you are. You do? Who am I? Who am I? And they get to tell you all these things. And that's whether because that's their perception of you, whether that's because that's what you've told them, or it could even possibly be, it's because that's who they want you to be. And honestly, none of that matters. What matters is you getting to know who you are. And you then having the confidence and the strength to project that out into the world. Until you know who you are and you project that out to the world in a way that it can be understood, you're going to always feel like nobody understands you. And because there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect in communication of you expressing who you are. Therefore, people can proceed and respond to you in a way that aligns with who you are. And you never going to get to that point until you get to know you. What if what you begin to discover you don't like? That's okay. That means now you're at a place where you're honest with yourself. You say, hey, look, I'm mean. And you know what? To be real with you, I don't even really like that. I don't really like that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change that. But you can't change something that you're not aware of. You can't change something that you're afraid to admit. You can't change a part about you that you don't even know or have a realization about that is part of who you are or who you've become. Because I became a lot of things. It wasn't who I started out as. It's not a part of my core values or who God made me to be or any of that. But it's who I became. Through life, through problems, through situations, through relationships, through hurt, all that stuff. You could become a different version of yourself that you no longer recognize and you no longer like or you no longer understand. Like, let's just say even with fitness. A lot of women can go through different things in their life, especially having children, going through depression, all those kind of things. And you can look up in the mirror one day, you be like, who is that? It ain't me. It ain't Key. They're like some 600-pound life stuff, but that ain't me. And you have to really look in there and be like, well, ain't nobody else in here, so that must be me in this mirror. And you know what? I don't like that. I don't like that for me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a change about that. But you're never even going to get that far in the process if you don't start with the basics of getting to know yourself. And that even looks different for every single person. So I highly suggest, if you don't feel like you know who you are, or even if you just want to test out if you do know who you are, get the piece of paper, write who is you, your name, and list it all out. And if those things don't seem to align with who you want to be, today's the start. That we're going to be making a change for that. We're going to be making the shift for that. I remember a time in my life and in my journey where I didn't know who I was at all. And I didn't even realize that I didn't know who I was. And in that time frame of my life, I internalized everything everyone told me that I was, whether it was positive or negative. So I would highlight all the things. You're a great worker. You're this, you're that. And I would just, if somebody tell me who I am, or asked me who I was, I would start spitting back out all these things, positive or negative, that people had told me. And none of this was what I said about me, who I say that I am, who God said that I was. This is what people told me that I was. This is what circumstances told me that I was. This is what stereotypes told me that I was. You see what I mean? So how could I ever feel within myself that I feel understood by the world, by family members, by friends, in relationships, if I didn't even understand who I was and I was just piling on things that did not resonate with me, that was not a part? A basketball player never gonna get mad at you for calling him a basketball player, because it's connected, it's in alignment, right? So if someone is calling you something that you're not, do you see how you can get defensive of that? But if you don't genuinely know who you are, in all honesty, why are you mad? And now that I sit and think about it, another reason why I probably struggle with that assignment so much was because it taps on my pet peeve, which is being mislabeled. Don't call me or blame me or label me as something I'm not, because I am not for it. And that was before I lost sight of who I was and after. I'm just not for it. I don't care what it is. Like, I want you to label me correctly. Talk about me correctly. And I was getting so upset and frustrated with other people for mislabeling me, but I wasn't correcting them. But I didn't really know who I was, so how could I even correct them? How could I even advocate for who I was, what I stood for, any of those things, when I didn't really know that for myself? I had lost sight of that, and I had become a shell of myself, only advocating for and producing and pushing forward into the front what other people said about me. And that made the voice of nobody gets me, nobody understands me so much louder in my head, because that honestly was the truth, but it wasn't the truth behind the right reasons. And I think we would get less upset with other people for not understanding us if we were just completely solid and solidified and secure in who we were anyway. So a person tells me, oh, you're a mother. Okay, yeah, I'm a mother. I know that. I know that. I'm secure in that. There's no question about that. But when other people tell you other things about yourself, what if it's not really who you are, but they keep saying it? And you hear it enough, you start to internalize it and take on that as a part of your identity. And it's not. What if you get so wrapped up in your titles and your labels that are part of your priorities so much that you forget who you are as an individual? You forget what you love. You forget what you're about. You forget what makes you happy, what makes you smile, because you're just so used to prioritizing the things that are part of the labels that are expected of you. And that's the reason why she had to do the exercise, because she obviously picked up on the fact that I kept mentioning how much I'm a mother, how much I am an employee, how much I am this to my relationship, and all these things, and how I'm everything to everybody else. And she's like, well, who are you to you? Who are you? I had to end up working through that and figuring that out for myself. So that is something that you have to do for yourself too. Because once you figure out who you are and what you stand for and what you like and what you dislike, then you will be able to start to implement that in your life and express and explain that to other people. And it will help you not care if other people don't understand, because you're good with you. When you're uncertain and unsure about yourself and not secure in who you are, because you know that very well, anything somebody else throws at you when you're unsure about that, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to accept it, or you're going to have an issue with accepting the fact that they said that about you, because you know that that's not who you are, but you also don't know who you actually are. So I want you to work on that. Work on trying to figure out who you are and get that settled. Welcome back to the Style by Casey Dawn's Fashion Corner, where every episode, you know what we gotta do. We gotta do a full fit check. And here's today's fit. Today's fit is very much giving personal style. This is a maxi skirt that I repurposed into another style of a skirt that I felt fit better with today's vibe. Of course, I'm gonna always do a little heel. This is a strappy heel that coordinates with the earrings. Yes, it does. And then, of course, I opted to do a double statement piece, which is this vintage denim vest. It's very much giving me, y'all. Y'all let me know in the comments what y'all think of today's fit check. And let's go ahead and get back to the episode. The last thing I would tell her is, I need you to update your environment, okay? You've already accepted that everyone is not going to understand you. You've already got to know who you are. So now you know what you like, what you love, who you are, what you stand for, all of those things, right? So now I need you to get into the places and rooms where who you are is accepted. People are going to accept you for who you are. They're going to sympathize and empathize with who you are because they're going through similar things, or they just care about you and love you enough to learn who you are, who you say that you are, and who you are today. They're not going to be trapped and stuck in who you used to be. They're willing to hear you out and understand where you are today. Because when I was surrounded by people who weren't even similar to who I was or who I was becoming, I don't expect them to be the same. I don't expect them to do any of that stuff. But if you're a mother and you're never around another mother, how do you think you would ever feel understood in that circle? Now, don't get me wrong. There are going to be people in your life who are willing to understand you, but that's where you got to know you. You have to be able to effectively communicate what it's like to be a mother to someone who's not a mother, to even give them the opportunity to sympathize with how it could be, because they just don't get it. They just don't understand. It's back to point one. They don't have the capacity to understand because it's not their experience. It's not their life. But if you can understand yourself, you can understand what it is that you're trying to articulate to them. If they're willing, you can help them understand you, right? But you can't help nobody else understand you who's willing to understand you if you don't even know who you are. But after we know who we are, we might need to change environments. There's no way that a bird can go sit amongst some snakes and be like communicating and understanding each other. Baby, the bird chirp and the snake hiss. They don't understand their language to each other. They don't. So when you update your environment, you get around people who speak your same language, then you can start to feel like you're being understood. And it's not even because they even understand, again, every single part of you, every single part of your journey, of your walk, of your life, your everyday ins and outs, but they sympathize enough because they speak the same language as you. So when I get around moms and they already see my eyes getting ready to cut, they see that deep breath, they're like, I know. And it's not even because they know exactly what I am thinking or feeling, but they know, like, I done had to take a deep breath too. My kids was doing X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I know mine was doing A, B, and C. So you see what I'm saying? They speak the same language. And that's because you get around community or environment where people who speak the same language as you. Update your environment. Whatever that gotta look like. Update your environment in your home to where it feels more like you. Update your environment at work if you need to get to a new, different work environment. Update your friend circle. Update your mom circle. Update your community or whatever kind of community or whatever area that you're working on within yourself. If you're around a whole lot of people who eat unhealthy, get around people that eat healthy. Get around people who go to the gym. Get around people that's gonna hold you accountable. Whatever it is that you discover about yourself or you're aspiring to have as a part of who you are in your life because you want to make changes, you have to get around that for the accountability of that, for the understanding the same language of that. If you're around, that's why they tell people who are addicts, you can no longer hang around addicts when you're done being an addict, because those people are not trying to stop being addicts. They're continuing the addiction. And if you want different and you want change, there's no way that they're going to be able to assist you in making that change, assist you in going and growing to the spaces that you're trying to. And that was something that I had to sit with for a very, very long time because it felt very, very lonely. And you might experience that as well. You might experience that it may get lonely as you start to get to know yourself, because as you start to get to know yourself and realize the environment you're in no longer fits you or no longer suits you of who you are genuinely, because you rediscover who you are, or you discover who you are and you don't like this, so you're trying to make a change to become who you would like to be. Regardless of what that looks like, you may have to update your environment. There was a time where I no longer liked how my home was, so I had to update my environment. I started putting around things that were inspirational, full of the word, full of encouraging words, uplifting words, because that's what I needed. That's what I wanted around me. And it wasn't until I got to know myself and I got to know that because half of my brain is music lyrics, I need to listen to music that fueled me. So when I got to know who I was able to learn ways that I could help myself, ways that I could rediscover myself, ways that I could surround myself in environments that would help me thrive in becoming who I was, rediscovering my identity, or even thriving into who I wanted to become. But that only came from once I got rid of the expectation, then I got to know myself, and then I worked on updating the environments to match where I was, who I was, and who I was becoming. I hope all that makes sense to y'all, and I hope that if you're out here and you feel like no one understands you, that this episode would truly will give you some things to consider so that you can start to feel free of that heavy weighted feeling like nobody understands you, the seclusion behind no one understands you, and help you truly come from behind those words and that phrase and get out into the space in the world of, it doesn't matter if no one understands me. I understand me. God understands me. And the people in my life that want to understand me, I know me well enough now that I can explain to them who I am, where I am, what stage in life I am in, what I'm going through, what I'm struggling through, how I need them to help me, how I need them to support me. If you can't tell people that, even people who are the most willing to help you will be useless to you. And I'm just be honest with you about that. There are people that were willing to help me, willing to be a part of my life, and I felt like they were still useless because I couldn't even tell them what I need. Therefore, they couldn't help me in a way that they didn't understand and they didn't sympathize. So we have to take some of the responsibility off of people and say, you should just get me. You should just understand me. You should just know what it's like. No, they shouldn't. And it's kind of rude of us to have that level of expectation on people, especially if we can't even do that for ourselves. So if you can't explain to someone who you are, where you are, what you're going through, even if you don't understand it, you can't be upset with someone else for not understanding it. Now, as you walk through your process of learning that about yourself, and you start to tell everybody exactly who you are, exactly what you are, that's where you can weave through the people who are unwilling to understand, the people who are never going to understand, the people who ain't trying to understand, and then you can shift around, right? But until you truly know that, you cannot make these changes and alterations, and as long as you feel misunderstood and you have those expectations to yourself, you have not discovered who you are, and you are not updating your environment to match around it, you are not doing anything but hurting your own self. You're stifling your own growth. You're stifling your own development. You're stifling your own progression, your healing, whatever it is that you want for you. When you're not understanding yourself, when you're not releasing people of these expectations, and you're not engulfing yourself in an environment that would nurture and water that to thrive and grow, you're doing yourself a disservice. And so today, if this information was helpful to you, or you know someone that'll be helpful to, I want you to share this with them. And that's all I got for y'all today. If you want to comment below some extra steps that you took in trying to come from under feeling misunderstood, feel free to leave the comments below and we could talk about them in the comments. And of course, as always, you can shop the look from today's fashion corner on the Amazon storefront link. You can join the Chosen Shawties if you want support through this process for yourself. You can shop any of our merch or our products on the link that's linked below in the description as well. And you can also follow us on any of our social medias for any more updates about podcasts and nonprofit and any other things that we have going on. And until the next episode,